Hello, welcome to my channel where I'm going to be sharing 10 romance books with you that all feature a lovable pet or animal in some way. Now I know we all love our animals, and a big trigger warning for a lot of people is harm to animals, and I can promise you that no animals will be harmed in the making of this video, but there are 10 romance recommendations I want to share with you that do feature either a really cute pet or animal, like I've said, that plays some sort of pivotal role in the story or is memorable for some reason. Now we've obviously got cats and I've got a dog as well, but I've got some more unusual animals. We've got eagles and parrots and bears, and also a piglet in here, and I might have even slipped in a mythical animal as well. So without further ado, let's get stuck in, and I'm going to start with a book that contains a very important dog. Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm so sorry. I am going to be talking about Ruthless Creatures from J.T. Geissinger. Please don't switch off and leave the video now, because I won't labour too much about this book, but I will talk about the dog in this book because I absolutely loved it. Now, if you haven't watched any of my videos before, the reason I just did that is because I recommend this book all of the time, and I think some of my regular viewers are probably sick of hearing about it. However, I cannot make this video and neglect the dog in this book, because this dog is pure genius. So this is, like I said, a mafia romance. It's book one of J.T. Geissinger's Queens and Monsters series. It is an absolutely brilliant mafia romance series, so I would highly recommend. In this book we're following the characters Cage, who is a Russian mafia hero, and our heroine, who is Natalie. Now the premise of this story is that Natalie was engaged to be married to a man. She was madly in love with him, and he disappears on the day before she's due to marry him, and people presume that he is dead, and she has been mourning the loss of this man for the past 5 years, and she's now kind of having to come to terms with the fact that he might in fact be unalive and he's not going to come back to her. So this book starts technically on what would have been her 5th wedding anniversary, and this is the moment when she meets our hero in this book, Cage. Now Cage is kind of her next door neighbour. He's moved into the house next door, and they continue to have a few interactions with each other. What she doesn't know is that Cage is from a mafia family, and he is trying to track down her late fiance, because the late fiance was in fact part of the mafia. He's taken something from them, and Cage has finally tracked his last known whereabouts down, and he is there to see if he can extract any information out of her as to where this fiance might have gone. And of course, in the course of this, they end up in a relationship together and falling in love. Now the reason this book is in this story is because our heroine Natalie has a dog called Mojo, and Mojo is described for the most part in this book as the laziest dog you can imagine. This dog does not want to get out from its bed. It's mainly sleeping the day away. It doesn't really enjoy going out on walks, and in the early parts of this book, when Cage is actually sneaking into our heroine's house, this is big bad Russian guy covered in tattoos. The dog does not even bat an eyelid, and Natalie starts to get really grumpy with Mojo because he is not much of a guard dog at all. However, there is a scene in this book, a moment in this book, where Mojo pulls through, not only for the heroine but for us as readers as well, and he absolutely plays a pivotal role at a brilliant point in this book. I'm not going to exactly say what happens because I don't want to spoil it, but if you read this book, I hope you do if you haven't already, and if you have read it before but can't remember Mojo, go back and you know, just keep an eye on what Mojo is doing, because at the critical moment Mojo saves the day. So we're going from a dog to a horse, and I want to talk about Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. So this isn't the only Elsie Silver book I'm going to talk about. A lot of animals actually appear in her books, but I do want to talk about this book. This book doesn't get enough love really. Elsie Silver obviously gets a lot of love now, but the main focus is obviously on her more recent series. This is the very first series that she wrote, and this is part of her Gold Rush Ranch series, and I believe this one is in fact book 1. In this one we are following Vaughn, who is in charge of a ranch, and they train racehorses, and our heroine in this one is Billy, and she is a racehorse trainer who is employed by Vaughn's ranch to basically train their horses. But there's one particular horse on this ranch, and the official racing name for this horse is Double Diablo, but they call this horse Dee Dee for short. Now, Dee Dee does have some behavioural issues, and she definitely needs a trainer with a firm hand, and Billy is the perfect person to kind of break through with this particular horse and really builds a connection with the horse that is really powerful. And Dee Dee becomes, for me, an absolutely essential part of this story. In fact, I would even say that Dee Dee steals the show, even beyond the relationship between Billy and Vaughn, because obviously they're going to start out not liking each other too much. They're going to be clashing at work, in the workplace, but ultimately they are going to fall in love, of course. But like I said, Dee Dee in this book, the horse, absolutely steals the show, and Billy has such a great relationship with this horse, and together it's just so heartwarming to see how she really turns Dee Dee around and actually makes her one of the best racehorses around. Next up, I want to talk about a dark dystopian romance that features an eagle, and of course I'm talking about Born for Silk by Nicci Harris. This is book 1 in the Cradled Common series, and in this one the romance is between King Rome and Asta, and the eagle in this book, Odio, is Rome's eagle. Now, like I said, this is a dark dystopian romance, and this is a world that is about 1,000 years older than ours. We do have humans, but we also have modified humans called the Jindi, and King Rome is a modified human. He is bigger, tougher, stronger, more invincible than a regular human, and also he's got some genetically modified parts as well to help him live in this new harsh environment. Our heroine Asta, she is actually a silk girl, and silk girls are basically bred and brought up to be the mothers of Jindi babies, because there's only very few human women who can conceive and fully bring to term and give birth to a Jindi baby, because obviously they're much bigger and stronger than regular babies, and so this takes a particular type of woman, and Asta in this one is that woman, and she ends up becoming part of Roman's like harem of women, and obviously it's their romance between them. But the reason I'm mentioning this book in this particular recommendation video is because of Roman's eagle, Odio. Now, Odio is also genetically modified, so this eagle is bigger and stronger than a regular eagle that we know today, and he's also Roman's guardian. So not only is he his pet, but he's almost his battle pet, if you like, and very protective of Roman as well. And he's kind of well known in the area. Everyone recognizes and knows who this eagle belongs to, because as the king Roman goes out to kind of do battle, he goes out with his troops and his tanks out into the wasteland. Odio is always flying around. He's flying ahead to look for enemies and to scan the area, and he's always the first there to defend Roman if needed, and will literally take a bullet for Roman if required. And most people are scared of this eagle. You know, it's very intelligent but very vicious, extremely possessive and protective of Roman. And so it's really interesting to see how, as Asta and Roman's relationship develop, she starts to develop a relationship with Odio herself, and Odio starts to realise the importance of Asta and how much Roman cares about her, and Odio also is asked to defend Asta for Roman when he can't be there. So he becomes this almost like this bodyguard. Now, I will give you a warning, because there is a trigger warning in here, that something does happen to Odio in the course of this story, but fear not, because Odio is strong. Like I say, he's genetically modified, and although something horrible happens to him, and it's horrible to witness, it's not the end of Odio, and he will appear in future books as well. Okay, next up, I mentioned at the start that I had included a mythical animal in here, and of course I had to include a book that contained a dragon, and so of course I'm going to have to talk about the Horde King of Shadow by Zoey Draven, and this is book 1 in her new series, The Hordes of the Elthica. This takes place about 200 years after the events of the Horde Kings of Dakar, which is this series that sits behind me here, and is very similar though. So it's similarly constructed in the sense that there are hordes, and this particular horde that we're following in here are dragon riders. So it's a little bit like the movie Avatar, where these horde kings bond with dragons and they become, you know, a matched pair, as it were. Now, what we know is that there are these heartstones on this planet, but they are dwindling in number and they're losing their power. And it's these heartstones that power the dragons. And so the Horde Kings of the Althika are desperately looking for more heartstones, because if they don't, they are gonna run into serious problems with their dragons as well. Now, the main character in this story is Sarkin, and he is a Horde King, and he hears that across the water in a city that we discovered in the Horde Kings of Dakar is a heartstone. It's dying, it's running out of power, but it's one of the few heartstones that remains. And so he just travels with his horde to this city with the intention of stealing this heartstone. When he gets there though, he learns quite a lot about what's going on, and he realizes that this heartstone is running out of power. And he hears about this girl called Clara, who happens to be the daughter of the king of this city, and that she might know the whereabouts of additional heartstones, because she is kind of a soothsayer, if you like. She has premonitions and she's been dreaming about additional heartstones. So he does a deal with her dad and says, I will raise this city to the ground unless you give me your daughter in marriage. And so they agree to this, and so this becomes like an arranged marriage between Clara and Sarkin takes her back with him across the sea to where his horde are based. And then he gives her the good news: hey, we are dragon riders, you are now my queen, and as such you now need to learn how to ride a dragon and go and secure your own dragon. And so this book very much focuses on not only Sarkin's relationship with his dragon, which is called Zoredan. Zoredan is a very interesting dragon. He has a really close connection with our hero, but he also has a very close connection, starts to have a close connection with our heroine as well. And as she's training to ride a dragon, she starts to have dreams about her own dragon, and the dragon that she really wants to bond with is a dragon called Ligath. Now, Ligath and Zoredan are actually related, so they're related dragons, like brother dragons. They came from the same set of eggs, if you like, but Zygath has never been able to be claimed. He's kind of a legendary dragon that won't let anyone claim him, and many people have tried and many people have plummeted to their death. And so when she tries to go for this dragon, things don't end well immediately. And of course, by this point in the story, our hero is very much fallen in love with our heroine, and so he's very scared for her, and he's kind of trying to stop her from choosing Zygath as her dragon, but she is absolutely determined. And I just love how this story kind of plays out. This was a 5-star read for me last year, one of my favourites, and I just had to include it in here because yes, it's not a traditional animal. I just thought it was such a powerful story and really wanted to include it in this recommendation video. Okay, so moving away from dragons, and we've got our first bear, but we've also got another little pet that's not actually a mammal, and I'm gonna talk about a cactus as well. And both the bear and the cactus feature in Mountain Boss by S.J. Tilley, and this is book 1 in her new series, the Mountain Men series. It's a contemporary small town romance, and we're following Courtney and Sterling. The story really is that Sterling owns this kind of resort, if you like. It's a small kind of resort where people go for the weekend to go hiking and things like that. So he's got a series of cabins in the mountains, in the woods, where people can come and stay, have a nice relaxing weekend, or can, you know, go hiking, camping, fishing, that kind of thing. And he hires Courtney to be his maintenance person to come and, you know, maintain all of the cabins and that sort of thing during the season. Now, they don't get off to a great start because Sterling doesn't realise that he's employed a woman. He thinks that Court was a man, and so when she turns up and she's this beautiful woman and he's very attracted to her, he gets quite angry, and at first he sets about trying to stop her from working for him. He tries to be extra mean so that she kind of quits and leaves, but Courtney is made of sterner stuff and she sticks it out, and eventually of course they're going to have a relationship. But of course I promised that this was going to be about a cactus and a bear. And I wanted to bring this up because our heroine, she is kind of really lonely. She struggled to make friends and she's always been fairly transient. She kind of goes from town to town in her little camper van and things, and she hasn't had a great relationship with her mother in the past either. And so she's kind of like all alone in the world. She's got nowhere else to go, which is one of the reasons she continues to stick it out. But the one thing that travels around with her everywhere is her cactus. She has this plant that's a cactus, and it's super cute because not only does she speak to it and talk to it like it is a person, and she kind of like, you know, shares all her secrets with this cactus, she also dresses this cactus up, and she has little outfits for the cactus, and when it's cold she'll put a little woolly hat on and a scarf around this cactus, and I thought it was super cute. So when I was putting this video together, I thought, okay, it's not a traditional pet, but the way that this plant is given its own persona and she really treats it like it's a friend to her, I thought it would be really cute to include this particular recommendation in here as well. In this book though, we do have a bear as promised, and this bear is a wild bear. It's no one's pet, and of course they are in the mountains, they're in the kind of wilderness if you like, and so there are going to be wild bears roaming around. But she kind of has this connection with this bear in some way, so it's not the first time she's encountered this bear. Usually it's from a distance. Obviously you don't want to get too close to a wild bear, but it comes in extremely handy at one particular point of this book where the bear kind of sort of comes to her rescue, and I just thought again it was a really interesting way to bring in the bear into the story and make it quite pivotal to the plot as well, so I wanted to include that. I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt this recommendation video because I actually recorded it a couple of weeks ago but had not yet got around to editing it. But in the meantime, I've just finished a book that actually had an animal in it and played a really pivotal role in the story. So I knew that I had to just hop in here and add this recommendation to this video. So the book that I've just finished is Mountain Daddy by S.J. Tilly. And this is book 2 in her Mountain Men series, and in it we were following Luther and Kendra, or Kenny and Rocky as they are known to their friends. Now the premise of this one is that Kenny, she's a 32-year-old woman, but she's recently been kicked out of her apartment because her roommate was not paying the rent, and so she's now going to live with her dad and start working for her dad in this small town in Colorado where the first book was set. Now on the way to her dad's house, she stops at this inn, and there she meets this older man. He's 24 years older than her, but he's a sexy silver fox, and they have amazing chemistry and they end up spending the night together. The following morning she leaves and carries on to her dad's house, and what she doesn't know and what she finds out about a week later is that this guy that she met in the bar that she believes is called Luther is actually her dad's best friend Rocky, and so they kind of then have to pretend like they haven't met before to kind of hide it from her dad that they've had this one night stand, and then their romance really goes from there. Now why I needed to pop it in on this video to share this information is because in this book there's an animal that really steals the show, and it happens to be a fox, and our heroine Kenny names this fox Buddy. So when she first pulls up into town, she kind of sees this fox here and there. It kind of shows up but kind of disappears. Obviously it's a wild animal, but later on in the story she actually rescues this fox because it's got some string or twine wrapped around its kind of leg and its paw, and it's really starting to hurt the fox, and she kind of somehow befriends this fox and it trusts her enough that it lets her remove the string from its paw, but it's still a little bit injured, and so she decides to feed this fox, and the fox starts to live under the decking on the front porch, and she feeds it. Of course then she starts to do a bit of research about how to look after foxes, what they eat, and she discovers that the foxes in the wild have a life expectancy of just a few years, and she cannot bear the thought that anything will happen to this fox, and she decides that she's going to name him Buddy and attempt to at least domesticate him a little bit, and her and her dad go out and buy this dog house, put it in their backyard for Buddy to live in. Now later in this story Buddy is injured and they have to take him to the vet, and what unfolds is really cute and amazing, and really kind of demonstrates how much our hero loves our heroine. So I just absolutely loved it. Like I say, Buddy absolutely steals the show, and I really wanted to pop in here and add this book as a recommendation, since we are talking about romance recommendations where animals play a major part in the story. So I couldn't let this one go. So I'll step back out now and the normal show will resume. On the same theme as a bear, I want to then go back to another Elsie Silver book, because like I said at the start, she actually writes quite a lot of books that do feature animals in some way. And so one of the books that really stood out that is bear connected is Wild Eyes, and this was book 2 in the Rose Hill series. In this one, again, it's a small town contemporary romance. We're following Skylar, who is a pop star, and she's going to Rose Hill just to kind of escape her fame and fortune, and she's come really to take some time to record a new record. And the hero in this one is West, and he owns a ranch, but he also is best friends with the hero from book 1, who owns his own record studio, and so Skylar is coming to record her record with West's best friend. Now, as she's on her way into town, she sees this bear and she thinks it's absolutely amazing, and she decides to stop the car and take a photograph of this bear, not realising that she's potentially putting herself into quite a lot of danger, because she shouldn't really be that close to a bear, as I previously mentioned. Now, West is coming along the road as well, sees what she's doing, and he's horrified by what she's attempting, and so he stops his car, gets out, and basically saves her, rescues her from being mauled by this bear. And so that's essentially their meet cute. So their very first encounter is because of this bear in this story. But it's not the only animal to get our attention in the story, because Skylar also owns this really cute parrot, and the parrot is really funny. It knows some rude words and it knows some rude sentences, and it's not afraid to express its opinion when someone it doesn't like comes near, and is happy to, you know, put people in their place. And so I love this book because not only do we have a bear, but we also have a parrot, and the parrot, like I say, is very opinionated indeed. In addition to that, there's also a wild mouse in this one, because it so turns out that Skylar's early. She's sort of, you know, escaped her famous life, like I said, and she's actually turned up at Rose Hill early, and so the hero from book 1 is not quite ready to take her in and help her record a record. And so she needs some place to stay, and she is offered West's guest house, which is above kind of the barn. And in this guest room slash apartment, there is a mouse who's made itself at home. Now, it's funny because West's sister, who's the heroine from book 1, she knows that this mouse is there because she also stayed in this guest house for a while in book 1, and she has never told her brother because she knows that her brother would obviously set a trap and remove this mouse from the situation, shall we say. So it's kind of their little secret, and so this is how also West's sister bonds with Skylar, because they're like, we know we've got this mouse, but we need to feed it and we need to keep it there and make sure that it's okay and not let my brother get his hands on this mouse. And so with the combination of the bear, the mouse and the parrot, it makes for quite a rowdy time. But I thought it was really good and really brings some humour into many situations throughout this story, so wanted to include it in this video. So we've had dogs, we've had horses, we've had an eagle, we've had a parrot, we've had a mouse, we've had a couple of bears, we've even had a dragon, and now I'm going to be talking about a piglet, because in a book that I recently read, Playing for Keeps by Emilia Finn, there was a wonderful piglet called Nacho. Now, Playing for Keeps is book 4 in the Checkmate series, and it's also book 2 in a duet, so it's part 2 of Andy and Riley's story. This is another small town contemporary romance, and like I said, this one features a piglet. So just to give a bit of context to this one, in book 1, Riley and Andy meet and they kind of have a one-night stand, and then they decide to try a long-distance relationship because she lives in the city, he lives in this town. She's really only in town to visit a relative, I believe it's her cousin, and so she doesn't really go there very often. But she and Riley have this amazing connection, amazing chemistry, and they do kind of hit it off and, you know, start a relationship. But she is very anti relationship. She wants to remain single, she wants to have her own freedom, and she doesn't want to be tied down, and she's quite scared of commitment and relationships, and so she's really pushing Riley away. Now, at the end of book 1, something happens, so there is quite a big cliffhanger, but as we come into book 2, what we then discover is that Riley needs help from Andy because he's in a bit of a situation where he needs someone to take care of him, and Andy is only too happy to come back into town, drop everything at home and be with him. Now, at first, Riley doesn't believe that she's going to stay committed to him, that she's going to be there for him, and he tries to push her away because obviously she's never wanted a relationship before and he definitely doesn't want her pity. But what we discover is that Andy has already made up her mind. She absolutely wants to be with Riley, and this is where this piglet comes in, this small kind of pig, because to prove that she is committed and that she can devote herself to someone and that she is not going to leave, she acquires this piglet. So she decided she was going to have a pet, but she went to the shelter and there was this cute little piglet called Nacho staring up at her, and so she has to have this pig. And so this pig comes home with her and it's so cute. It goes around everywhere with her in a little backpack. Also, when it's at home though, it is quite adept at going through the rubbish and making a bit of a mess in the house. So it's not, you know, it's not properly trained. It's a little bit cheeky, makes a little bit of a mess, but again, some really cute little moments with this piglet in there. And I thought it was an unusual animal to have in a book, but also brought a bit of levity to the story as well. So wanted to include it here. Okay, I've got 3 more recommendations for you and they're all cats, so I'll save the cats to the end. I'm a cat owner myself, and if you are a cat owner then you know that not only are they cute and wonderful, but they also have absolutely their own attitudes and personalities, and they are only going to do what they want to do. And so just bear that in mind as we go through these stories. So the first one is Brutal Ambition by Sam Mariano, and this is a dark romance. This particular book is a standalone, but is a spin-off to her Coastal Elite series, and in this one we're following Bryn and Killian. Now, Bryn and Killian first meet because Bryn is lured by this college student down into a basement to be used as a virgin sacrifice for this ritual because of a secret society, and Killian actually happens to be there. He is also part of a secret society, not the one that is trying to use her as some sort of sacrifice, but he's not happy about what this other secret society are trying to do, and so he decides to intervene. And he's not intervening, he's not a good guy, he's not intervening to save our heroine, but he's intervening because he doesn't want this other group to do anything to put his own secret society in jeopardy. And so he finds himself in a situation at the start of this book where he's going to save our heroine, and they kind of make off in the night together and get out onto the road. And by the time he kind of gets there, she wants to go back to her own apartment, and he's like, no, you're not going to be safe there. These guys know who you are, they're going to come after you. Your only way to stay safe is to come with me. And of course, because he's a Sam Mariano hero, he is not going to take no for an answer, and he's also going to decide that he's become quite obsessed with her himself, and he's absolutely going to take her for himself and refuse to let her go. Now, what we learn is that Bryn actually owns a cat, and she is absolutely obsessed with her cat, obviously, and is quite concerned that if she stays with Killian, there's no one that's going to be there to look after her cat. So of course, what does Killian do? He decides to catnap the cat. Yes, that's right, he's going to go and catnap the cat, and the cat's name is Toast, which I also thought was quite funny. And he brings the cat back to his apartment and almost holds his cat hostage in order to ensure that Bryn is not going to escape or leave him. And so I thought this was quite amusing, a really clever use of an animal in a book, because the heroine is so much in love with her cat. Obviously, she's not going to let anything happen to her cat. And first time I think I've ever seen a hero hold a cat hostage in order to force the heroine to stay with him. And so I absolutely had to include this one. But do check your trigger warnings. Obviously, this is a San Mariano, so it is pretty dark. Next up, another dark romance, but with a slight humorous edge to this one. It's Lights Out by Navessa Allen, and this is book 1 in her Into Darkness series. We were following Ali and Josh and the cat in this one, who is called Fred. So Fred is Ali's cat, and I'll first explain a little bit about how the setup of this book works and then tell you a little bit more about Fred. So this is a dark stalker romance, and it's also a masked hero. Ali is a trauma nurse. She works at a emergency room in an emergency room in a hospital, so she has seen a lot of horrific things. We also learn about Ali that she kind of has a bit of a kink. She really likes a man in a mask, and she fantasizes about someone stalking her, breaking into her house, making her do all kinds of things. Now, Josh happens to be someone who also plays into this fantasy, likes to wear a mask, but also makes thirst trap videos and puts them onto a site that people can watch. And Ali is one of his biggest fans. Now Josh catches on to the fact that Ali is a bit of a fan. She happens to be connected to him through his roommate, because Ali and his roommate used to have sort of like a booty call arrangement, and so Josh does know who Ali is, and so he decides that he is going to start stalking her, finding out more about her, until the point where he thinks, I wonder if she really is into this stuff in real life or it's just a fantasy in her head. I'm going to see if she really does want what I'm offering. And so he literally breaks into her house and is there waiting for her when she gets home in his full gear, wearing his mask, and the relationship goes from there. So it is a dark stalker romance, like I said. Lots of dark stuff happens in here, but it's also quite humorous, and it really takes the edge off just quite how dark this book is. But the author did a great job, I think, in my opinion, of towing that line between not being too stupid, not too funny, but still enough levity to help with the dark elements of this book. Anyway, like I said, this review really is about Fred, and Fred is a very clingy cat, also a very mischievous cat. When Ali goes out, you know, it's quite likely to make a bit of a mess, climb curtains, pull down curtain poles, that kind of thing. And the cat doesn't always get on with people. It can have very rocky relationships with people. But of course, in true stalker romance fashion, the cat actually gets on really quite well with Josh. And this really puts Ali on edge a little bit, because she's like, why is the cat liking you? Doesn't seem right, doesn't normally like it. And Josh starts to develop his own relationship with this cat. And I think it's a really good metaphor in a way for this couple and their relationship and how they kind of develop. It does add a humorous edge to the story, and also ultimately Josh starts to call this cat his son, which again really kind of cements Fred's place in their relationship. The last book I want to talk about, and the final cat, is in By the Letter by Julia Wolfe, and the cat in this one is called Mary. This is book 2 in the Mile High Billionaires series, and we're following Roman and Shira. This is another contemporary billionaire romance. Now in this one, Roman and Shira have a great first meeting, because they both sign up to have an experience with each other as part of a sex club. And Shira is a very shy woman. She doesn't like to ask for what she wants, and so her fantasy is for a man to be quite dominant in the bedroom and just do whatever he wants with her and take what he wants. And so this is the kind of scenario that Roman and Shira sign up for. They absolutely have an amazing time together, and they kind of go their separate ways. Their paths cross again though, because Shira has recently become a widow, and her husband was very wealthy and owned this company, and she is now in charge of this company as a result of her husband's death. The company isn't doing so well though, and so she needs some support, and Roman is the person who turns up to try and save this company, because Roman is absolutely brilliant at going in and fixing problems, and if he can't fix problems in companies, then he's only too happy to sell parts of the company off. And he has decided in advance that Shira is not the right person to run this company, that she should definitely not have taken over from her late husband, and because there was such an age gap between her and her husband, he definitely sees her as a bit of a gold digger. And so when they first meet, they don't actually know who each other is straight away, because in the scenario in the sex club they were both wearing masks, and they don't get off to a great start at all, and Roman is particularly unkind to Shira, shall we say. However, it's not too long before they realise who each other is, and this is because Shira finds out that she's pregnant, and she basically reports it back to the sex club so that they could tell Roman that he is potentially going to be a father. And of course then they meet and realise that the person that they had this amazing night with, and the person that they are now going to have to co-parent with, is in fact the person from the workplace. And so of course they are on a very difficult first footing. Now Roman, this is where Roman really shines and he comes into his own, because Roman really starts to realise his mistake. He starts to get to know Shira better. He starts to realise that everything he believed about her was completely wrong, and he sets about trying to rectify that mistake and really goes to town on the grovelling. And he wants to be all in on being a father as well, so he is completely there to support her through her pregnancy. Now what we find out, like I said, is that Shira has a cat and the cat is called Mary. And of course, if you're pregnant, you're not supposed to have a lot of contact with cats, particularly around the cat litter and things like that. So she needs someone really to come into her house and make sure that, you know, the cat litter is cleaned out, and someone to feed the cat for her and stuff like that. And Roman absolutely takes this task seriously. And again, the cat is not friendly with Roman at all at first. The cat really doesn't like him, but the cat really stands as a metaphor for the relationship between him and Shira as well, because slowly but surely Roman earns this cat's trust. And over time, the cat allows him to do more and more things. And eventually, you know, he's able to stroke Mary and they start to absolutely develop a relationship with one another. And this happened in a very, very slow and kind of organic way. Like I said, as Roman starts to build trust with the cat, and this very much lines up to the relationship he's having with Shira as well. So I feel like his relationship with the cat is kind of a metaphor for his relationship with Shira as they go through, and throughout the course of this book he not only wins the cat over, but he wins Shira over as well. So there we go, that's 10 romance recommendations that feature an animal which I feel are really, really kind of pivotal to the storyline, or play quite a key role, maybe in the plot, but also in the relationship between couples as well. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me. And as always, if you've got any recommendations for me, if you've got any books that feature animals that you absolutely love, then put that in the comments section down below, or you can always fill in my book recommendation form as well, a link to which is also in the description box down below. So all that's left for me to do now is thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye. Time, see what's become of me. Hello, welcome to my channel. You're watching Helen. And today I'm... Hello, welcome to my channel.